Hi there. We'll be starting in just a moment. Just give us 1 second. Good Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos. We'll be starting in just a moment. We'll let some people just get in as we're starting today. The new book of Numbers. Shabbos is coming up. Lots of exciting things. Shavuos next week. So we'll be starting in momentarily. Good to see our friends from Florida here today. We'll just wait 1 more minute because we never can start on time. Whoops. Did I lose everybody? Got everybody here? Okay, we're going to get started. Good Shabbos, everybody. As today is the the Shabbos before Shavuos, it is also the Shabbos that we begin the the book of Numbers. It is the 4th book of the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and now Numbers. Last few weeks, we spent discussing many of the laws that are pertaining to the Kohanim and the Levites and the laws pertaining that happened in the Holy Temple. This week, we're back to the story of the Jewish people traveling in the desert. It is very well known that the Shabbos before Shavuos, which is the time when the Jewish people receive the Torah, we read the Torah reading of Bamidbar. And the word Bamidbar means in the desert. Why is it that we read this Torah reading always the Shabbos before the giving of the Torah? As we know, the Torah on Mount Sinai is in desert Sinai. And why is it that the Torah was given in the desert? And the Torah being given in its place and in its time, everything has a specific reason. And the Torah, when it was given in the desert, was there to teach us that though a desert is a place where it's not usual for people to live, the Torah is teaching us, number one, that every single person has a relationship with the Torah. It doesn't belong to anybody, just like the desert doesn't belong to anybody. But as well as the Torah is teaching us that at times we need to go to a desert, meaning we have to, when we study Torah, we have to dismiss everything that's going on around us as if we're only on a special island or desert studying to be able to apply ourselves to the Torah. But the ultimate mission of the Torah is to take what we've studied in the desert, so to speak, to take what we've studied in this time of isolation and then bring it about and use it when we go and to teach the people that we encounter, which is very important, especially in the time that we're currently enduring, that many people are in quarantine and isolation, whatever it may be, that we have to utilize this time that we can in a way that we can enjoy the study of Torah and excel and do many things which we ordinarily maybe wouldn't have time to do. But the very fact that we're forced to quarantine and we have to stay put where we are gives us time and moment to reflect on what we do, how we do it, and how we approach it. And as the Torah tells us that everything in life, as the Baal Shem Tov taught us, we have to learn on how we can reflect and see what happens. So too, especially at the Torah reading, being Bamidbar, being in a desert, seemingly we seem very far from everything. We're in our own little desert that's perched, there's nothing there. Still in all, we take this time to reflect and energize in ourselves and to study so that we should be able to become stronger after all this ordeal. Taking it now to the next step, looking into what we study about and learn about in this week's Torah reading, they say a story about a fellow Yankel from Chelm. Chelm, there were very bright people in Chelm. And this guy was always very busy, talking about being very busy. He was very busy and always very tired. And he would always tell his friends, I can't wait for retirement. Finally, I'll have time to rest and I'll be able to, relax from everything. A few days later, retirement came. He was so excited. And then another few weeks, his friend meets him again and he's yawning and he's tired. He says, what happened? I thought retirement, you're going to be able to rest. You're not going to be tired anymore. So Yankel tells him, what do you see? When you're not working, you don't have any opportunities to take a break. So I'm always tired. When we look at life, a lot of times things in different perspectives help us understand and appreciate what we're doing. And when we contrast to what normal or seemingly popular opinion is, and then we look at the Torah, we can see the concepts in the Torah, how they enlighten our lives and give us such appreciation in seemingly simplistic things. Just give you a little bit of a story and how we're going to see it in this week's Torah reading. 22 years ago, about May 16th, 1998, in Chicago, a 15-year-old child, a teenager, was shot twice in the chest while playing basketball on a playground. He was then rushed to the hospital and collapsed 30 feet from the entrance of the hospital. They were banging on the doors of the hospitals that they should come out from the emergency room and take the child in, but there was a law that they can only help the people in the hospital. Should they leave the hospital and help somebody outside the hospital, that would be neglectful to the people in the hospital, and they can get sued, and therefore they would not leave the hospital to go help that person. And after banging, the kid was bleeding to death. The nurses and the doctors would not leave. They were not allowed to. Finally, they said, call 911 and somebody will come and bring him in. Finally, they called 911 and somebody came, brought him, but by that time, unfortunately, it was too late. Now, did the people in the hospital do something wrong? Technically, they did nothing wrong. They had to follow the law. Eventually, Chicago adopted something called the Good Samaritan law, that they would be allowed to leave the hospital and everything else, as we know. But what's astounding over here is that the emergency room personnel, they did not violate any laws. On the contrary, there was no legal obligation for them to go out and help them. We see the same thing that happened in many different tragedies. For example, in Sandy, there was a terrible story that happened in Staten Island where this mother was trying to help her children and somebody didn't want to let them into a home. Did the guy do anything wrong? He had no obligation to let them in. But what would the Torah say about such a situation? What does Judaism say about such a situation? And over here in this week's Torah reading, we find something very unique. When God counts the Jewish people, he counts all the 12 tribes. But there's one tribe that God doesn't count, or that is counted separately. Every single tribe had to bring a half a coin, and then they counted those half a coins, and they knew how many Jewish people were. There was one tribe that God said is not going to be counted amongst the Jewish people, and that is the tribe of Levi. And the tribe of Levi, the Torah tells us that Moses would go to each one of their tents, stand outside the tent, and a voice of heaven would come out and say how many people are in that tent, and that's the way he would count them, because they counted them from age month old and up, while the rest of the Jewish people were counted from 20 to 60. Why was the group of Levi counted differently and separately? And the commentators explain to us because the group of Levi, the tribe of Levi, did not participate in the sin of the golden calf. When all the Jews sinned 40 days right after Moses gave them the Torah, they heard the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai. 40 days later, the Jewish people unfortunately sinned with the golden calf. And the only tribe that did not participate with the sin of the golden calf was the tribe of Levi. Because of that, they were chosen to be leaders of the Jewish people. But interestingly enough, it wasn't only the tribe of Levi that didn't sin with the golden calf. There were many Jews that didn't sin with the golden calf. Why then was the tribe of Levi singled out that they should be the leaders and representatives of the Jewish people in the Holy Temple? Why not then pick any Jew who didn't participate, which there were many? And over here, the commentators tell us as follows. One of the Hasidic commentators say as follows and says, look at the difference. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai and he told the Jewish people, Mi Lashem Eloi, who has God on his side? Who is going to stand with me and rise up against the occasion and say what you guys did was wrong? Who is willing to challenge the status quo? It was only the tribe of Levi who was willing to stand up on Moses' side and stand up against those who may have sinned with the golden calf. Oh, these were the people who were chosen to be leaders. Why? Because everybody else may have been innocent bystanders. They were quiet, live and let live. They didn't say anything. It's not their obligation to stop them. But they weren't willing to voice. They weren't willing to say what was wrong. They weren't willing to stand up and lead by example. Only the tribe of Levi. They were the ones that were willing to stand up and tell Moses, we're on your team. We are ready to tell the Jewish people what is right and what is wrong. We are ready to stand together with you. Moses was teaching the Jewish people. God taught the Jewish people an ultimate lesson. A lesson that is enshrined in the Torah, which is brought it in the book in Leviticus. Lo yisamed al dam reyecha, you cannot stand on your brother's blood. Teaching us that every single person has an obligation to stand up for what is right. You can't just be an innocent bystander. Standing on the side and saying, well, it doesn't say, there's no law that mandates I should help you. Judaism says if you want to be a leader, if you want to be worth anything, you get to stand up and also voice and say what is wrong and what is right. You need to stand up for what is right and identify and take what it takes to be able to help those in need. Just to be quiet as a passive bystander and say, it's not my job, why should I get involved? That's not a leader. A leader is one who takes a term and takes the stand and says what is right. The tribe of Levi, they were the leaders of the Jewish people. And because they took a stand, they weren't just passive bystanders. This the Torah is telling us when the Torah tells us about the count of the Jewish people. The count of the Jewish people was every single time that God wanted to show his love for the Jewish people, he continuously counted them. Counting has in it a unique dichotomy. When you count something, on one hand, you're taking away its personality, it's just a number. But at the same time, it also shows its uniqueness. One number is not the same as another number. Over here, God was telling the Jewish people, all of you are unique. Every single Jew has a unique mission and job and that he has to do in this world. But the tribe of Levi was counted from a month old because their mission, they have proven themselves to not just be unique, but to be the leaders from a month old to show that they are willing to take a stand. Every single one of us has to be a leader in their own way. Every single one of us, as we started off talking about Bamidbar, as the Jewish people were given the Torah in the desert. Yes, we may be in quarantine, but we have to do our best to be a leader and stand up for what is right, to teach, educate those around us, to make sure that we come from the situation stronger, healthier, and better, teaching example, more educated, and helping those around us, not just being quiet, but being helpful and being a voice for the people that may not have one. An interesting story told about a great scholar from the last century, known as Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch. You may know him from his commentary on the Chumash. He was considered to some as the founder of modern Orthodoxy, whatever it may be. But he was a very great Torah scholar. And he lived from 1808 to 1888. And he lived in Germany in the early 1800s. He was asked to be a rabbi of one. He was a rabbi of the city of Oldenburg. Later on, he became this grand rabbi of Moravia. But while he had this great eminent position in Moravia, in 1851, a handful of families asked him to move to Frankfurt, who they were dealing then with the secular enlightenment of Judaism, which we would call today probably a branch of the Reform Judaism, who was questioning and having issues with traditional Orthodox Judaism. And at that point, he left his position from being this great rabbi in Moravia and moved to Germany to take care and to deal with these 9 families that were in Frankfurt. And some asked him, why was it that you left this great position to be able to go to the city of Frankfurt where there were very few families? And later on, in fact, the city blossomed into a beautiful community, and that community was then transported to today what we know as the Yeka community in Washington Heights, KJ, and so on and so forth. But what made him move there? And he said, if you look at this week's Torah reading, when God said to count the Jewish people, God said every single Jew should give a half a coin. And that half a coin had a specific weight. He didn't just say a half a coin. God said the weight should be about 7 grams of silver. And they counted these coins. And he said when God looked at the Jewish people, he didn't count them. He weighed them. He saw the value of every single Jew. It doesn't make a difference how many. Every single Jew is important. The one Jew that we can educate, that we can help, every single life is important. And because of that, we have a responsibility to be a leader in every single way we can. As we approach the festival of Shavuos, as we come from the new book of Numbers that we're studying now, it is this time that we understand and appreciate the value of every single person, especially as we're coming through this plague. And thank God we see an end to the end of the light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. We see the value of life. Never underestimate what you may say, the impression you make, whether it's 1 person or 2 people or 100 people. With the words we say, the choices we make, and how we lead has an unbelievable impact, whoever may be, whether it's our children, our family, our friends. And never underestimate who you are. We all are leaders in our own respective way. As we come and as we prepare for the giving of the Torah, next Friday is going to be the holiday of Shavuos, a time when we recommit ourselves and rededicate to the giving of the Torah. We need to recommit and rededicate ourselves to the concepts and the precepts of the Torah, that we all are responsible for one another, helping each other, teaching each other. We then come out stronger and healthier and celebrating together. Wishing you all a good Shabbos, a good Yom Tov, and we hope and pray we celebrate very soon together. Being that we know, here's a little commercial message, being that, thank God, the laws have been adapted, as you want to call it, or as regulations are being released or relaxed. We know that now there is ability to daven 10 people with a minyan, up to 10 people in the shul. Religious services are now permitted up to 10 people in a shul. So those that would like to join, please let me know, text me or RSVP so we can know that we have only 10 people. God willing, for the festival of Shavuos on Friday, we are looking to how we can do accommodations and outdoor, some type of service that more people can somehow, some way hear the 10 Commandments of Mount Sinai. We're still waiting for further policies concerning guidelines from the healthcare professionals to make sure it's done in a proper and an appropriate way, that those that can do it in a safe way, in a social distance manner. So we have up to 10 people that can come to shul this week, social distancing with masks and everything else. So if you'd like to join us, please let me know so we can know how many people will be coming. Have a good Shabbos. Looking forward to celebrating, not in a distant, but in a close way, all together, happily, with the coming of Mashiach. May me now. Amen. If anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to post them in the comments, and I will try to address them.